Hey y'all, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, the special education boss. If you've ever felt confused, overwhelmed, or just plain frustrated at the 504 IEP table, you are in the right place. Every week, I'm breaking down the rules, the rights, and the realities of special education so you can walk into meetings informed, empowered, and ready to make real change. And whether you're a parent, a teacher, an advocate, a school-based member, or somebody who's just trying to do right by a student, this podcast gives you straight talk, real answers, and tools that you can use immediately. I'm not here to play politics. I'm not here to play sides. I'm here to train people who sit at the table and teach you how to follow the law, ask the right questions, and protect the rights of students. So go ahead and hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change. We're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. Hey, welcome back. If you haven't met, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, special education boss, training everyone that sits at the 504 IEP table to navigate and negotiate successful student outcomes, and the author of the soon-to-be released book, The Epic IEP. So go get that on Amazon, pre-order, come back to us at theepic.com, and we will release your pre-order bonuses. So let's get to the question of today. And so the question of today is that looming thing, homework. And so often I see in IEP meetings that a student is struggling to complete their homework, struggling to understand their homework. The parents are struggling to understand their homework. And so the question is, Karen, is homework legal? Is it required? So let's talk about what it's not. What we do know is there's no academia, there's no research anywhere that homework benefits a child who has been at school all day. Now, do adults drink a pot of coffee at 8 o'clock at night because we have a mortgage and we have work to do? Absolutely. But the instructional day is the instructional day. And for kids that have exceptionalities and disabilities, really getting them to complete additional tasks without the original instructor at home called homework can sometimes impede their emotions, their behaviors. It can become combative at home, argumentative. And so there's no legal requirement for homework. Nowhere, anywhere, even in NCLB, No Child Left Behind, or ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act. So there's no requirement legally for homework. There's no requirement for homework at the state level unless there's been some exceptionality at your state. And so the question is, if I'm a child with a disability and I have homework that needs to be done and it's not being completed, what can I do? So we can go back into the IEP and we can make an accommodation. We can say homework attempted with parent. Then I would have the parent just put a post-it note on it saying, we attempted the homework, we presented the homework, Billy was unsuccessful. But this battle back and forth of homework is really penalizing the student with the disability often. Additionally, if a student has a bunch of homework and they're not getting it done, maybe we need to look at the actual instruction and the expectation of the learner during the instructional day, right? Maybe we needed to consider chunking it or reducing it, or maybe we need to change the expectation that we're giving the student. But again, there's no legal requirement for homework. And so certainly if your child is attempting it and it's causing problems at home, you need to go back to the IEP table or the 504 and talk about a way that we can mitigate that problem. Okay. All right, so let's get to our questions of the day. We have been asked a lot about the paraprofessional webinar. So we have a new one coming up November 5th, Wednesday, November 5th at 7 p.m. Central. So go on and register for that, and we will see you at the paraprofessional training. Again, what are the roles of paraprofessionals? What are their obligations, responsibilities, and duties? And really more important, what are their limitations as it relates to especially design instruction, implementing components of the IEP, and supervision, direct supervision by a certified special educator. All right. Question. What do I need to do to go from a 504 to an IEP? My child is now in 8th grade and has multiple neurological issues and hasn't been tested since 2nd grade. She has a medical 504 and struggling daily with tasks and struggling to get all the work done. Well, good news, if you're already on a 504, you've actually already triggered Child Find. And what do I mean by that? So Child Find says that we identify, locate, and evaluate children with suspected disabilities who may be in need of special education and related services. So if a student is already in a 504, we don't suspect they have a disability. We know they have a disability. So I would send this email. Dear staff, this is my formal request for my child to have special education testing. Areas of suspected disability are attention, task completion, learning, and all the others. We look forward to coming in and signing notice and consent. Next question. I missed the webinar about paraprofessionals. Where can I watch it? I'm a paraprofessional that has left hours and hours and sometimes days with kids with no lesson plans for the teachers. First of all, thank you for serving our kiddos. And I'm so sorry that you've been put in this situation. Yes, but we will have a new paraprofessional webinar Wednesday, November 5th at 7 p.m. Central. Go to specialeducationacademy.com and register there for that webinar. Next question. Can special education co-ops use a para for 6 kids in a classroom when 2 of them are labeled one-on-one for a para in their IE, one specifically for medical purposes? So the role of the service provider, whoever that is, general ed teacher, special education teacher, paraprofessional, has to be implemented with fidelity as the last codified IEP. So whatever we agreed upon in that IEP, it's legal, it's codified, it has to be implemented. So if a student is scheduled for a one-on-one, that para needs to be serving that student the totality of minutes that they are in the instructional day. All right, next question. When a student is given adapted physical education once a week, so the OT from the OT in one state, and then you move to another state, is the new school required to find a way to honor that service? We were told they don't have to honor that service and nothing is done to accommodate this part of his IEP. They just took it out of his paperwork. What can I do if they're legally supposed to get that service, even though they said they can't? So adaptive physical education, the only state that I've ever heard of that doesn't have it is Kentucky. I don't know why Kentucky doesn't have it. But when you transfer, your IEP is then received by the incoming district, and they have to honor and replicate the IEP in as much as they can. And so for the first 30 days that you're at that school, we have to honor those minutes. I wouldn't imagine that you would be in a state other than Kentucky that didn't have adaptive physical education. But in that 30 days, they also take time and see if these the special education minutes and the related or instructional service minutes are needed for the student to receive FAPE. And if they deem that that's not necessary, there may be a consideration to remove that adaptive physical education. Next question. How does a 504 plan have to be honored in an after-school program that takes place at the school, but it's an outside company? So the 504, just like an IEP, is for the instructional day. If you look on the schedule of services page, it will list out the instructional dates, usually somewhere between, 360 instructional minutes to about 425. And so there's an obligation to deliver that. Outside of the instructional day, there would be very few places that you would need to have that happen. Maybe if you're in marching band and you receive supports in marching band and that's part of a grade. And of course that happens outside the instructional day, but a company that, rents space from a school district after the instructional day is not bound by the 504. All right, next question. What about virtual alternative schools? Oh, virtual. In Michigan, we do not have enough special education staff. Are we still required to enroll a student with an IEP? So if a student lives in your school district, you have to enroll them in the school. If you enroll them in the school, you have to implement their 504 or their IEP. I am studying to pass my special education exam, and I have 7 years of experience in special education. My 2 nephews belong in Hampshire Fournette ISD. My oldest is in a 504 program, and his plan is not being followed, and one teacher keeps trying to discipline by staying after school for things he did not do and is already on medication. My youngest nephew is 4, but he shows signs of autism since he was small. So I told my sister-in-law to get him tested at school to start giving him the help he needs. He's now 4, diagnosed by a doctor. He needs help. The doctor's written a letter and they keep giving him a hard time to start the ECSE program. I did ask at central office who was in charge of special ed and who was a diagnostician, and they said it was a school counselor. So here's what you need to do. I would reach out to the special education director for the district, email them your concerns in writing, and ask when we can come to the table and get these areas of concern addressed and get both of those students full special education testing. Next question. Hey, I need help. The schools lied to me 2 days ago and tricked me into agreeing to put my son in a FSC class. I asked if the kids in that class are high functioning like my son was, and they said yes, but my son saw the class and he says, Mom, the kids are there are very disabled One doesn't speak, and now they're wanting to keep my son back in his resource class. And I land, and I am wanting to wait for the next emergency IEP meeting. My son has a hard time with instructions, and his cognition is low at 64%. However, if you met him, he would seem normal, talks like other kids, talks to adults, and understands like an adult. What can I do? So placement is based on the same thing we base every other decision on: data, 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 which is one of the things that we really talk about in the book, The Epic IEP. We can only make decisions based on data. Otherwise, we're making decisions based on feelings. So I would call another IEP meeting and say, this setting is not what I understood it to be, and it is lower than my son's levels. We need to deliver my son's IEP with fidelity, and we need to give him rigor. But this classroom setting is not the correct setting for him based on his current needs. Next question. My daughter is hard of hearing and wears hearing aids. She currently has a speech IEP, but I've been encouraged to change her to hearing impaired. I signed for testing, but after the initial testing, I was asked to sign for more language and audiological testing. She's a kindergartner, and I told them, I would rather wait till January and see if she needs more support and refuse to sign. I teach at her school. This week, she comes to my classroom with an audiologist who said she had been sitting with her today. She gave me very valuable information. However, I didn't agree to this. The next day, she sent me an email letting me know all the things that she needs after observing her and talking to her outside of the room and checking her hearing and her hearing aids. I'm absolutely livid. I plainly told them I did not want this done and have it in an email. I work at a school, which makes it hard. What can I do? So testing is consensual. Two things are consensual in special education: special education services and special education testing. And so I would email and say, this is my formal notice that if you believe you have consent, I am again revoking it. Do not further test my child until you have written notice and consent completed by myself. Next question. Can you pull a special education student out of reading or math for a 30-minute tutorial, or does it have to be from a non-tested area? Just tutorial, not resource. So it depends on what the content is. If this is from a settlement, if this is from an agreement, if this is from compensatory package for minutes that were denied, it depends on what was agreed for. But if you have a reading or a math class and you're pulling for those minutes, the only way that would be appropriate is if they were reading or math minutes. Next question. Hey, I'm a parent of a child with autism and ADHD. Do you provide services to help at IEP meetings? We do. So we have a team of partner advocates that serve parents from the Kodiak Islands to Miami-Dade County and everywhere in between. And so all of our services are done remotely. So we serve parents all over the nation. So if you need support, if you need records review, if you need representation, just email us at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. and we'll get that to you. Remember, we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. Remember, go out and get your book, The Epic IEP. Go to Amazon, get your book, come back to the epic-iep.com and register your information, and we'll release your $500 worth of pre-order resources, and they're bonuses. You like a bonus, don't you? We'll see you guys in the next training. Hit subscribe, share this with a friend. And you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change, we're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.